a book doesn't give you full transformation. A book just tells you what to do, and there's already so much information out there on the internet, right? And frankly, like most people don't have the time or the expertise to do that. They need a mentor. And that is where I come in. Welcome to Money Musings, a podcast that breaks down money, investing, and wealth with zero BS and unapologetic irreverence. I'm your host and money co-conspirator, Stephanie Xenos. Let's get into it. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I have been preparing for this moment for weeks. And then in a stroke of impulsivity, here we are. I am officially in my leopard bathrobe. I was just twerking to the song of my own podcast intro and feeling inspired to begin. Somehow that feels appropriate because I feel like that's going to be the vibe around here. I am going to be choosing authenticity, transparency, over perfection. And if you know me personally, that is definitely my vibe. I am always a little bit direct, maybe saying a little too much. But for a podcast, I feel like that is just what you might want. So I am here to teach you everything that I know about money and about everything that touches money. But before, I want to just let you in on my life. So I want to let you know who the heck you are talking to, who you are hearing from. And I like to think of myself as a long list of dichotomies. I feel like I inhabit the masculine and the feminine with both frequencies. If you don't know me, you probably think I'm like this super girly bombshell, and yet I can absolutely crush a plan, a project, a to-do list. I have so much masculine structure and frame and abilities and just absolute desire to get shit done sometimes. And on the other hand, I love lounging with my kittens and relaxing and doing nothing, reading a book. I am a physicist and also a spiritual seeker. So I studied physics at UCLA. I worked on telescopes, rockets, looked at Big Bang Theory data, all the things. And yet I completely believe that we have no idea what the heck is going on around us. So very open to all of the spiritual mysteries of life. You'll definitely be hearing about that on this podcast. People think that I am dead serious, and I am dead serious about many things, and yet I also do not give a fuck. I think I can be maybe the most productive and the most lazy person. I have so much hope for humanity, but if I had to choose a side, I'd probably choose the side of animals and nature. You might think of me as like an absolute extrovert dance party animal. And on the flip side of that, I cannot handle any smells. I cannot handle any lights. I cannot handle sounds. I am like the most sensitive person. I also believe in crazy hard work. And I also believe in magnetizing, just allowing things to come to you through straight up magic. I have a massive respect for money, massive, and a complete irreverence for the financial services industry. You're going to hear a lot about that. I'm also obsessed with nuance and the senses and the details of everything. And if you're like, what the fuck? Well, let me tell you how I got to this place of all of these dichotomies. I feel like before we even kick off with that, I have to talk a little bit about my mom. I know we're going way back here, but my mom, her name is Eileen. As a character, she grew up as like the goody two-shoes, the middle child who did everything right until she decided to move to Greece when she was, I think, 19 or 20 and teach aerobics for the summer. She was like singing Barbara Streisand in the discos when my father saw her. And it was a full Mamma Mia story from there. They were together for, I think, like 8-ish years. And I have been told that I am a passion baby. So very volatile love relationship. My mom moved back to the US with me as an only child and a single mom when I was about 3. And from that day, we were in pretty rough shape. So I did not grow up knowing about money, certainly. Having money, certainly. I grew up quite poor. And I even remember like being embarrassed to have friends over and things. I didn't want them to know I didn't have my own room, that I slept in the living room. I remember being embarrassed of my clothes, that kind of stuff. So as a kid, my little character was this a little bit lonely, only child, latchkey kid. I was an animal lover. I always related more to animals than people. I love mysteries and like solving mysteries and Nancy Drew. I think I was a little too much and too loud, a little misbehaved, and my mom would make a lot of excuses for me and my family. I had a nickname, the Billy Goat, because I loved climbing things and being outdoors. And then as a teen, I was like this straight A cheerleader that sort of didn't belong in any groups, definitely not popular. I had all these horrible nicknames like Ratito and Mr. Ed because of my big ass teeth. And people liked to make fun of me for having no butt and also liked to call me a slut just because I had boobs. So, high school was pretty rough. But the worst part was actually my home life in high school. So my mom eventually remarried. She met this man. He was attractive, he was smart, and he had money. And our life changed overnight. Suddenly, we were living in a nice house. For the first time, I was having my friends over and not being embarrassed. But the unfortunate thing was that my stepfather was a real asshole, and he was physically abusive to my mom and to me. It got so bad that we had to move out at one point, and I'll never forget when my mom told me that we were moving back in. I just could not understand. I could not understand why any mom would put their daughter in this position. And yet, I finally understood later that it was because of the money. My mom just did not have the financial resources to keep us safe. So we ended up moving back into the house. And so I learned from a very early age the power of money. I became obsessed with money. I remember writing in my journal, like, I am never going to rely on anyone. I do not believe in love. I will never be married. I am going to be so rich. I'm going to be the richest, smartest, most beautiful person I can be so that I will never need anyone. So you can imagine the energetics around that, right? That is like pure fear. But guess what? Fear is an incredible motivator, right? So as much as I feel sorry for little Stephanie learned about money from a place of the most intense drive, right? I was so driven. I knew that I was going to be rich. There was no question. I was going to be rich. I was never going to have to rely on anyone. And that was all so that I could feel safe. So that's little Stephanie. And what happened from there is a little bit remarkable. I went on to study physics. I worked at NASA and SpaceX. I chose to study physics because I thought if something was hard, that meant it would make a lot of money, which is hilarious looking back, right, as I see myself. But I was definitely trying. And I really believed that if I was smart enough to do it, that I owed it to the world to do it. And so I studied physics. Like I said, before I graduated, I was working at NASA. I also had an internship at Caltech. So I got to work on rockets, telescopes. I got to send mice to space. I could do a whole episode about all the cool stuff that I got to do while working on space stuff. But I was just so committed. I was in a learning and building phase. It was an extremely masculine time, right? I think I put aside all of my emotions. I shut down everything. I was obsessed with perfection and control. I feel sorry for anyone I dated in this period of my life, right? But it made me so good at so many things. At 18, I opened a Roth IRA. I started investing with an advisor, which was like the worst possible situation, but that's how it started. And I am completely self-taught. So from there, I slowly started to learn more about money and incorporate my learnings until I ended up getting myself in a very unique position later. So without getting too ahead of myself, I had this dream of retiring at age 30. And every year on New Year's, I would look at that dream and I would say, yes, I still want to retire at 30. And I was working at SpaceX at the time. I was saving all of the money that I could. I was getting company stock. I took out a personal loan in order to purchase my first chunk of stock, which probably anyone in the financial services industry would have said that was a bonehead move, but I felt so sure that it was going to turn into something useful. So at age 30, by the time I got there, I was not quite ready to retire. Instead, I felt like I owed it to myself to take advantage of my Greek citizenship, which I had from my father, who I never knew, and travel the world. And I decided to do that. I moved abroad. I had a partner at the time. I moved to Greece first to take on a project with my father. And I thought, I don't know my dad that well still at this point. I had barely met him. We met for the first time when I was 20 in a truly Mamma Mia story. I had to find someone to help me find him. I wrote him a letter. I went. Probably, something for another episode. But when I showed up at age 30, I purchased a piece of land and I started building a house with my dad. And I thought I'll probably never be able to afford to buy a house in LA, so maybe I can build this house with my dad. And as time went on, I started to panic. I started to feel like I wasn't quite ready to be retired and I wanted to move back to the US. I somehow got lured into working at SpaceX again. I got to launch the first satellites for Starlink. And a couple years after that, I found myself in a unique situation where, because of the villa that I built with my dad, suddenly I had this passive income from the villas. And I had the return on investments from my investments. And I was in a position where I could retire. So by the age of 32, I gave my notice at SpaceX and I formally retired with enough money to live the rest of my days. And then it was like, now what? So I was living in Seattle at the time. I joined a women's co-working space. It was for women entrepreneurs, business owners. It was called The Riveter. It was a scene. I love it. I still think about that. And I decided one day to host a workshop. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to host an investing workshop. I'm just curious if anyone gives a fuck. So I went to host this workshop and we announced the workshop a few days before it went live or before I was actually going to show up on a stage. And over 100 women showed up. And it was this moment where I was like, oh my God, I've been thinking about money and working on money and investing since I was 18, right? So that had been about 14 years at that point. I'm retired. And I just assumed that no one was interested because my whole life when I tried to talk about money with people, especially my friends, I got nothing, right? People were just not excited or they were freaked out by the conversation. And that just sucks. So there was this moment where I was like, oh my God, people actually want to talk about money. And maybe I can help people with money, people I know, people I don't know, right? And looking back, I knew that I owed so much to fear. Fear had been the best teacher, the best motivator. And without fear, I never would have retired at 32 as a multimillionaire. But I also knew that I was turning a corner and that fear could not serve me anymore. That I had gotten to the end of what fear could teach me. And I knew that now I wanted to teach and share from a place of love. I wanted people to learn about money from a place of desire rather than fear. And so, I started doing these workshops with women all over the US, speaking at employee resource groups, at, companies, hosting my own workshops, working with women one-on-one. And I decided to start leaning into all of the soft skills. I felt like I had been in my masculine for so long. And again, that had served me well. And now I was ready for something else. So just as a side note, so that you know what you're getting into here, right? Yes, I studied physics. Yes, I would consider myself a materialist, right? Which means that, well, you can Google it, but it means that, I believe in science and the observable science. I believe in our scientific system. And I also believe in the wild shit. So I believe in telepathy. I believe in animal communication. I believe in energetics and that the way we think and feel actually changes what happens in the world around us. I believe in manifestation. So if you're not into that wild shit, buckle up because when I started manifesting, it changed my life. And that was only about 4 years ago. So as I'm turning this corner, right, I know there's more out there. I get to this place where I'm ready to explore. And I dove in with TBM. If anyone knows TBM, I'm a big fan. To Be Magnetic, awesome, awesome work. But I've also done all the things. But this in particular came to me in a moment where I was ready for this next phase. I manifested my dream partner. I built my Money Muse dream team. I 10x'd my income. I arrived in the most heavenly, gorgeous place I could ever live in beautiful Topanga Canyon. And I really feel like I arrived. I've arrived. I'm so excited to be here. And that makes me question again, what is next? What am I on this planet for? And for me, that is service. That is you. I've discovered recently that my gift is my voice. I have a very hard time writing. I have a lot of things that I'm not good at. But what I am really good at is telling stories, teaching, using my voice for good. Speaking is easy for me, and I've been told that I'm easy to understand and also entertaining. So I want to be your teacher. I want to take things to the next level, starting with your knowledge and this podcast, right? This is why I'm here. I'm here to take my teaching to the next level and open it up to more people. I'm leaning into bigger transformations for the women that I work with so that they can have the biggest possible impact on the world. The whole reason I started my most recent project, Ignite, was so I could have the biggest, deepest transformation for the biggest number of women. I thought a book sounded cool. Again, I'm not a writer, but like a book doesn't give you full transformation. A book just tells you what to do, and there's already so much information out there on the internet, right? Like TMI. So you have to figure out who to trust. Then you have to filter the information for you. And frankly, like most people don't have the time or the expertise to do that. They need a mentor. And that is where I come in. So I'm so happy, so blessed. I feel like it's my dharma to help women and to mentor them on the journey to financial freedom and transformation. And I also really believe that we need women right now to step into their benevolent wisdom and power in this next phase of the world. So I am here to support women in that transformation. Life has actually been pretty hard this year. I experienced most of the major stressors. I moved cross country. I moved in with a romantic partner. I lost my dear, sweet, beloved Pussarella, who was my kitty of 15 years, right here in this yard to a coyote, which was such a big experience for me. I mean, she was my oldest, longest relationship. I loved her dearly. This year, my business got shut down on Instagram. My partner lost his job or lost his access to income. And truly, that could be enough just to destroy someone. And it's been really tough, but I am leaning on others and I am learning to receive from others and to slow down and to lean into my gifts, that I don't have to do everything, that I can just do the things that I'm amazing at and want to give my full heart and attention to. I have an absolute dream team supporting me in my business right now. I love all of them. I'm so lucky. Thank you, ladies. And I adopted the 2 cutest freaking kittens this year, and they have been bringing me ridiculous amounts of joy, like absurd. And you will probably be hearing about those kittens. I'm sorry. I hope you're not offended. I'm a cat lady, and I'm also really trying to lean into the natural rhythms of life. In other words, I don't work in my luteal phase, okay? Absolutely not. I just don't. Because anything I do that time of the month, I'm going to be like, it takes me 3 times the effort and it's half as inspired. So I may as well rest this week. I'm really trying to focus and lean into when I am shiny and ready to go. And that also, I acknowledge, is a huge privilege. So as much as I can, I'm focusing on being rather than doing. I want to be a lighthouse. I want to be a vision of what's possible for women, and I want to help people live their best fucking lives with the most freedom, with the most inspiration. And in order to do that, I do believe that money is a big part. And so, again, we're going to be talking about money and everything that touches it. I'm magnetizing the people who need this message to this podcast. And once again, back to the why. I'm retired. I could be doing anything I want. I could be napping on a beach all day, but this is my dharma. I am here to support the women who will change the world in this next chapter. Because again, the world needs benevolent, feminine wisdom and power. And I'm here to pass everything on to you. So I hope you will join me for this journey. Truly, I cannot wait. Thanks for allowing me to be part of your money journey. If you heard something that made you think in a new way or expanded your views about money today, please be sure to like, subscribe, and leave me a cute little note in the form of a review. See you next time. As always, a quick but important reminder that everything I share here is solely for the purpose of your entertainment, education, and inspiration. Nothing in this podcast should be taken as personal, financial, legal, or investment advice. Everyone's financial situation is wildly different, and that's why it's so important that you do your own research and decide what's right for you.